watching and getting active while watching and masturbating, all that kind of stuff. I moved over, man, and it was for a while. I spent a lot of time.
I tried to conquer as many people as I possibly could. Only reason why, because I didn't know who I was. So I was out here conquering people, thinking that I was doing something.
I need to have the courage to tell people exactly how I really feel, instead of
looking at some of these comments. They're basically saying it's not actual sex. I think Baca mentioned masturbation. I think that's probably also something that you could possibly just kind of clump together with, honestly, all together. I can definitely relate to that in terms of where I was with that, man. I think one of the things that I had to, I guess, kind of crazy, because I spent after actually like overcoming the actual physical addiction of watching and getting active while watching and masturbating, all that kind of stuff. I moved over, man, and it was for a while. I spent a lot of time almost trying to pray it away, right? Like you would just sit there and be like, Lord, just take this lust away, Lord, please, and doing all of that, right? And it's so interesting that being able to see didn't go away. Like being able to see beautiful women and things like that and acknowledging that, it didn't go away, right? What happened, though, was understanding more of the importance and the value that God has on the human life, how sacred the human life is. Learning about those things that kind of ended up helping me more so turn that direction away from being lustful and looking at women as objects or imagining them as, having sexual activities and having sex with them, right? Instead of doing that, it became more of like, she's worth more than that. They're worth more than that, because God has such an extreme value over their life, such purpose over their life. And so I wrestled with that for a long time. And instead of just always praying about it, it became more of like, okay, there's some heart changes that have to occur. But the only way that this heart change occurs is willingly getting up and submitting myself daily to Christ. And also, again, doing those applicable things where we're putting things in place to where I'm not falling over that same incident over and over again. And really recognizing that, okay, what is it about the human life that has so much value that would keep me from making that decision to vandalize it, to disrespect it? Any pleasure that comes at the cost of violating someone else's existence, someone else's identity, someone else, their person, it's not good. It's not good at all for me to do that, right? And at the cost of me getting this pleasure and filling this pleasure up in me, it comes at the cost of violating your sacredness as a human being, is not a good pleasure at all. It's just not, it's not healthy. It's not right.
Right.
It's completely wrong. And for me, overcoming this was a process, but it was a process of more about me focusing my relationship on Christ. Because if I didn't, then I would probably remain in that same cycle of thinking around the same people that kind of influence these thoughts, around the same desire and taste of music that influence these thoughts, TV shows, and all these people that you follow on social media. You get on social media every day and you see it all the time. So of course you're giving yourself permission to keep those thoughts in your mind, and they don't go away. So it comes to a point of just really focusing your relationship on Christ. And by that, this is why we do our Bible studies. This is why we're focusing on, Exodus and walking through these books and trying to get the meat out of the text, right? Because for us to understand this does so much greater things for our mind, and then how we apply it. I really think you're going to have a tough time if you're walking around closing your eyes. If you're going to really have a tough time as a believer, even when you get married. I used to like really trick myself into thinking that once I got a girl or once I got married, like all this stuff would go away. Crazy. It's probably the worst thought you could ever have.
That's what happened to me. And I was scared. I was like, Fluff, I got married. It didn't go away. I'm screwed.
Yeah. It's like one of the worst thoughts you can have. A lot of divorces are discovered to be taking place with being in the midst of it. It's so much deeper than that, than just trying to find a quick fix and a quick solution, thinking that a relationship and you having a physical sex life is going to change that. Because I think, again, even if you don't watch pornography, and you're indulged in physical premarital sex and getting in beds and getting with people all the time, there's still an issue there. It's just not, it's not through video and through watching and masturbating. You're just actually doing the full thing. And so now we still have the same issue. It's just expressed outwardly differently.
Do y'all want to change these things? Because I have to tell you, there is a part of self motivation in there. Again, as I read Romans 7 to you, where Paul talks about that, again, it's a very rich text. You can preach out of that text probably for months on end. Paul says that Paul says, I don't want to do this. He said, it's a constant struggle for me. He was like, so even when I want to do good, this is here. We have a role to play in this entire process. I don't care what the sin is. I really don't. I don't care whether it's sexual sin. I don't care whether it's lying, cheating, stealing, whatever the scenario is. Do you want to change it? Like, do you want that not to be a part of your life? Or have you decided, as Dion was alluding to earlier, where some people might say, well, man, that's just going to be me. Like, that's just going to be my one Achilles heel. No, if you want to change it, then you got to really get to a place where you make that a priority. It was interesting. There's this thing called Underbelly on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's amazing. It's a guy who takes some of the worst stuff in life and he's documented it. It's incredible. There was a girl on there, and she was saying she was a prostitute, and he was talking about, how'd you get into this, young girl? And she said, here's what I realized. This messed me up just listening to this documentary. She said, most men want to live fantasies instead of realities. So she said, I was the fantasy that they couldn't have, she said, while they had reality at home. And she said, the problem with the fantasy, and she said, you pay for it in more ways than you think. This was her saying this. She said this. She's like, she said, they just don't give me their money. She said, they're risking everything for a fantasy. She said, I'm just a fantasy for these dudes. I was like, dang, that's fantasy. She said, but I'm the escape. Watch this, y'all. They'll hang with me for a second. She was dropping nuggets. She said, I'm the escape of what they never learned how to really do. So she said they put a ring on somebody's finger that they don't know how to be married to. So they keep running to me to get the fantasy that doesn't happen for them at home. She said, you don't have any obligation to me when I'm done with you because I meet you for dinner. She was explicit. She's like, and then you got to go home. She said to somebody who loves you, she said, I don't love them. She said, I don't love any of these men. She said, as a matter of fact, she said, I think men are the lowest people in the earth. She said, but here's what I do love. She said, I love their money. She said, they're willing to pay me for a fantasy. That's crazy. That's so far out there.
Yeah.
It's out there. Same thing. As I think about it, you know what I was chasing when I was chasing those women? What I was chasing was a fantasy. It was a high that I could never reach again. So I tried to conquer as many people as I possibly could. Only reason why, because I didn't know who I was. So I was out here conquering people thinking that I was doing something. So I just want to encourage you to think through this deeply. Do I want to change this behavior? Because I have to tell you, I've dealt with and worked with a lot of couples where pornography has been an issue. It's not real. So you're literally chasing something that's not real, that's not sustainable, that really you just have to perform in, but your whole self doesn't have to be a part of. You never have to be a part of that situation with that person. And you're paying for that. And when a woman feels like you would rather, when you use Dion's terminology, go beat somewhere, she's looking at herself saying, what's wrong with me? So you get married to her, she's like, What's wrong with me that you got to go run off or spend extra time in the bathroom, whatever, like you had to use it, going there to be there, you late somewhere, or out in the car, out in the garage, whatever.
And just because I don't know who's listening to it, just to have a little bit of your back, I think something can be wrong with her in the sense that you guys have to have some tough conversations. Because I know there's men that have wives that do make it tough because she may be rude or she, and again, these are things we want to talk about. But sometimes you may be in the relationship already. And I've met men that's like, man, it's tough. She don't do nothing. And I love what PD was saying. When you realize the stakes you have and what you could lose, it kind of puts a tough conversation into perspective, right? It's like, okay, let's have a tough conversation. Let's start building and working, getting on the same page with sex versus having to go a sideways route to get the same result. Okay, there's actually probably going to be a lot less pain on that front end. Like most things, right? It's the easy, hard principle. Usually if you do the hard work up front, it's easier on the back end. You cut the corners, make it easier up front. It's usually harder on the back end. So, and this is something I feel like I'm constantly working in all of my relationships, is to have the courage to tell the truth when I need to, not to be so raw that I'm unfiltered. Because I think some people take that too far, where like you gotta have wisdom to what you talk, right? You want to be real, you want to be raw, but you got to be relevant too. Like everyone don't need to know everything on full blast, but sometimes I need to have the courage to tell people exactly how I really feel instead of glossing over something and then I'm holding on to resentment and then it may come back later. And so it's the same vibe there. And we will avoid the tough conversation up front. The relationship deteriorates or something, and then we have pain on the back end. And so you get to pick where you want your hard to be. You want it to be on the front end with the working out, with the getting in shape, or on the back end with the disease and the hospital visits, right? So keep that in mind too. But back to PD's point, there's a lot of pain, man, that can come attached to that. So keep that in mind.
I don't have words for that woman who says to me, and you're right, there are some women who have made it very difficult in their homes for their intimate relationships to work. But I don't have words for a woman who's like, I've never denied this dude. I never do. Hey, and everybody, woman you meet, man, she ain't trying to be Jungle. She ain't trying to be G.I. Jane. That ain't her thing. I'm just saying, I'm trying to help y'all for real. That's not every woman, man. It's not happening. So you have to understand those things too. And then you also have to understand, I mean, you're connecting with somebody on a certain level. See, this is part of the problem having, and this is just me. Now, D and Greg might feel different about this, and I'm fine. Or y'all might feel different about this. This is the problem with having a lot of those premarital things. Now, I'm going to tell you, like I said, I was out there. So I was 18, 19, brother. I was trying to do whatever I could. But let me help you with something. I brought some of that into some of that mentality into my marriage. And I was kind of wondering where it was because I had all these other experiences. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's difficult on somebody who's like, hey, like that ain't me. You gotta be aware of that because you had all these experiences. Now you got this visual in your mind where this person's like, no, that's not my thing. So you got to be thinking about that. There's a lot of impact that happens with these choices and decisions. And so you got to definitely be wise with the way that you go about this.
What's going on, party people? Listen, I'm just popping in real quick to let you know that I've got a new podcast I'm whipping up in the kitchen called The Bridge Podcast. I'm part of it with co-host Pastor Demetrius Colbert, who you've seen on this channel quite a few times. And we're here having real, raw, and relevant conversations.
We are going to say what you say. So sometimes it might be a little PG-13 because we're going to say what you say, like clapping cheeks, like they turned me on to that. Clapping cheeks. I was like, what?
Yeah, they're talking loud of their masturbation experiences, what they're currently doing when they get home at night, who's doing what, how many times, how did it feel, sore, all that good stuff. I mean, they're getting in it.
Now, before you get to thinking, no, you don't gotta be a Christian to check out this podcast, because at the end of the day, that we are all humans having life experiences, have questions, serious topics, serious concerns that we all would love to be helped with and get navigation with. And so this is where we come in, looking to give some insight from my perspective and his, that we could come together and share some wisdom that I think will be beneficial for you and the journey of life you're on.
The whole point of the bridge, again, is for you to be able to get on it and not criticize the bridge, but to use the bridge and say, I need to walk across on this side and hear what needs to be said. And I need to walk across on that side and hear what needs to be said.
So don't forget to check us out. Link is in the description, and I can't wait to see you there.
It hits heavy on the topic of pleasure. I think to get the best perspective on pleasure, I think really starts with what you're purposed and designed to do. Because pleasure with boundaries has a space to refresh you, but without boundaries in the correct context, these pleasures can be set out to destroy you in the long run. And so, when you have a right mindset of where you're going, what your mission statement in life is, what your purpose is, in every area of your life, your relationships, your economics, your energy, your faith, all these kinds of things. Your purpose is so necessary, because along the way, you will encounter opportunities where a pleasure could be fulfilled. But you have to then ask yourself, is this pleasure pushing me toward or refreshing me to continue reaching my purpose? Or is this pleasure setting me back from what I am actually wanting to reach? So if I'm going to dive into, say, but I have a purpose of having a happy home, a happy marriage, a loving wife, one that I can confide to, commune with, and do life with, I can make room for, I can do all these things with, but I'm running into this constant temptation of you have to ask yourself, what am I doing and why am I here? Like it's in these kinds of questions you have to ask yourself before you dive into those pleasures. Because the moment we bypass that is the moment we start stepping foot into uncharted territory. And here we are 20 years later asking, where did it all go wrong? And it was from that decision that continued to build up that caused so much trouble. You have to ask yourself what you're doing and why you're doing it. Otherwise, you will lose so much more than what you anticipated when you first started that thing.
And the more I learn, I'm actually starting to get mad at how the church handles it, because it's completely void of it. There's no awareness to the programming that these young men and women are in. There's no, I think we're going to see it. So when we were younger, I think PD's generation and stuff, how many naked women were you going to see in your lifetime, right? Versus now the access that you have in one night. Okay. And yes, the church needs to update their thought process and realize you just can't keep screaming at these young men. We got to realize they have to be programmed in the reverse. There's nothing from the time I wake up, I have about 1 million things programming me for short-term decisions. No one's teaching me and showing me that how my decisions are going to compound over the next months and years. And so when the church just comes on, it's like, yeah, why were you dummy? Why'd you do that? My bad. I was acting how everything else is showing me. And I think if we think we can be 1 foot in, James says, man, is double-minded, unstable in all of his ways.
All his ways,
we can't expect to be all right, I'm gonna go to church every week, but then I'm gonna still be programmed by everything that's around me in culture and that's how you end up struggling your whole life, because you're doing the game the wrong way. And that's why hard work doesn't always pay, right? We've seen people as a hooper, Grape. How many people have you seen legit in the gym working hard? They're hoopers. They try. They still suck though. And they not you. You know what I mean? And it's just because you work hard at bouncing the basketball does not mean you're going to be better. I'm sorry. And you can go to church every week and not grow. That's why you need to open your Bible. There's a legit picking up your cross and suffering. And I promise y'all, however y'all get over the sexual immorality, that will be part of it. You're not going to just sit back with your Bible and be calm. And it's just so easy. When you read all this stuff and then put the Bible down, you've started it. That's when it's burning inside of you and you just gotta log on, you're doing all the right things. The only part you mess up with is when you stop. Right.
Yep.
And that's why I love mindfulness. No matter how far you get, you make it a day, 2 days, 3 days, cool. Just like Grape was saying, ask yourself, not just why am I here, but ask yourself, like, what did I get from this? Cool. It's done. Bam. Deed is done. What did I get here? How long does it last me? Like, what was accomplished here? Okay. And then eventually, man, you're not going to keep you're not going to keep answering that question in truth and still desire that.
Yeah.
You're like, man, you're going to see it for what it is. And that's when you can say, okay, because here's the thing. Like, I didn't understand the compound effect like that. And I had so many bad decisions compounded against me. I had to ride some of that out. Some frustrating things happened, but I had to start compounding some good decisions too. And I genuinely think that's just how the process works. And the decision didn't happen whenever he got caught. It started so far back. And so the rebound also is probably going to be a quite a ways back. But when he does get there in truth, man, what a beautiful feeling. So
I want y'all to just take this week to think on a mission statement for your life.
That's a good one.
I think like take the time to write out your mission statement for your life. Even if you don't come back with a full mission statement, what did you think on? What were some things that drove your thought processes to put that together? Taking the time to do that, I think really, really helps us put into better perspective what our pleasures are currently, and then ask ourselves, is this bringing us closer to fulfilling this mission statement, or is it distracting us from it? And then I think that kind of helps us put in a bigger perspective of like, okay, well, I know what I'm costing myself completely now when I dive into this. Like there comes a point, again, like Dion said, I'm not going to keep asking myself and be comfortable with looking and feeling silly and stupid after making the same mistake and same decision and having to answer the same question that I don't ever have the answer for because I'm just going with my emotions in the moment. You're going to get tired of that. So I think a big way to get ahead of that is, what's my mission statement and the current pleasures that I have, good or bad. Okay, good or bad, whatever pleasures that I currently enjoy right now, is this something that can refresh me closer to this mission statement, or is it something that distracts me from it? And if it distracts me from it, then I need to put things in position to where this is a pleasure that is, excommunicated from my life until it's put either in the right context, right? Sex is for marriage. I don't want you to go into your marriage and then say it's not for me, right? Like in the right context. Okay. But there are some pleasures that you just don't need to have in your life. And so we need to be able to balance those. And I think that kind of starts with understanding why you're here.